Um, so again, hello, welcome to the Orange Chamber of Commerce's Lunch and Learn event series. We're so excited that you're able to join us today to hear from our amazing speakers from Cal State Fullerton North SBDC on a tactical approach to sales and profit. My name is Elisa Driscoll, and I'm the Interim Vice President of Community Relations at Chapman University. I'm proud to serve on the board of the Orange Chamber of Commerce, and I'll also be your moderator today. So first, before we begin, we'd like to extend our sincerest thanks to the Chairman's Circle of the Orange Chamber of Commerce. You can see their logos here displayed on your screen. We so appreciate your support of both the Chamber and local business during these mind-boggling times. I know I speak for the Chamber on behalf of that there. To give you a quick overview of our time today, we'll hear from our wonderful speakers, Danielle and Ace, and Manal is here as well to kick us off today. And then please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation by putting them in the chat box. You'll also have the opportunity to ask questions at the end if you so desire. And finally, we'll close today with some announcements of upcoming events that you can see from the Chamber. Before we get started, just a few friendly reminders. First, please know that this session is being recorded and may be used by the Orange Chamber for marketing purposes. Please keep your mic muted during the presentation unless you're talking. Feel free to use the raise hand function if you have a question or type any questions in the chat. Additionally, if you feel comfortable doing so, we ask that you please turn on your cameras so our speakers can see who they're speaking to. I know that always makes the experience a little bit better if you do that for them. Our wonderful Orange Chamber of Commerce staff, Connie Chan, our operations manager, will be monitoring the chat as well. So feel free to ask anything that would be good to discuss during this presentation. And you can also private message either myself or any of the speakers if you prefer to remain anonymous with your questions as well. And finally, we just ask that you relax, have fun. I know we're all zoomed out and probably multitasking and doing a dozen different things at once, but please feel free to just enjoy and relax. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers today. So Manal is the director of the CSUF North SBDC, one of 9 SBDCs under the Orange County Inland Empire SBDC network, a program offering no-cost assistance to small business owners to help them start and grow their businesses. The SBDC team of consultants help entrepreneurs launch and expand through growth planning, startup assistance, marketing strategies, access to capital, and building their teams. Manal owns her own business and understands the challenges that small businesses face. Next, we have Ace. Ace has been consulting for over 9 years. He has experience in healthcare, education, bioengineering, entertainment and media, wholesale franchises, and nonprofits. Ace has consulted private SMEs throughout the US, Canada, South America, UK, and UAE. He currently manages a tech business accelerator in Los Angeles. And last but not least, Danielle has over 30 years of food and beverage, retail, and athletic sports operations experience. She holds expertise in building sustainable and impactful operating systems to support growth objectives, strategic sales planning, customer service, and marketing. Danielle has helped open hundreds of successful restaurants, bakeries, coffee cafes, retail storefronts, catering, and event production companies, and sports operations. So with that lovely introduction of our fantastic panel here, I'll go ahead and turn this over to our presentation team. So Ace, go for it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Alyssa. I couldn't have done it better myself. So I'm gonna jump right into it because we have about an hour, right? And we wanna get in as much as we can. There's a lot of content here. So feel free to ask questions, stop us if there's anything, put something in the chat. We'll be happy to answer it. So with that, we're just going to jump right into it. Just quickly, just some additional info about who we are at the SBDC. Alyssa did a great intro. Basically, we have a bunch of locations throughout the US. There's roughly 1,000 locations. You're part of the one of 9 in the Orange County. We happen to be one of those 9 in the Orange County area. We have hundreds of small business owners, like Alyssa mentioned. Some of us are business owners ourselves. We get hired to do consulting work to help businesses like you guys. You saw my experience. You heard about Danielle's and Manal's experience. We have different levels of expertise across the network. So we're pretty sure we can cover quite a lot of different industries. We're funded by the SBA, so this is paid through tax dollars, and we're also partially funded through the state, through the California Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, called GoBiz. So all this is paid through tax dollars. This is all free. It's at no cost. Basically, I ask that if you have any questions, if there's anything that you want help with, feel free to schedule a call with us. We'd be happy to help. Again, it's at no cost. We just ask that you, help us validate a lot of the growth that you receive. All right. So this is all of us. You met us. You heard about us. So let's go right into today's agenda. I'm actually going to pass the baton off to Danielle to start us off. She's going to do the first half of the presentation. I'm going to do the latter half. So take it away, Danielle.
Thank you, Ace. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be with you. So there's a number of things that we're going to be covering today. So I'm just going to run through those quickly. We're going to be talking about creating more revenue streams for your business. We're going to be talking about your customers and how well you actually know them. We're going to talk about expanding your customer target. So not only do we want to identify our regular customers, but we want to find new customers. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about incentivizing spending inside of your operations. We're going to talk about staying top of mind and how we do that. We're going to talk about productivity and labor management, and we're going to talk about reducing expenses. And something that's incredibly important right now and has been through COVID and will continue to be very important is technology and media. So we have a lot to cover today. So why don't we go ahead and jump right in, Ace? Do you want to go to the next slide for me? Great, thank you. Okay, so the one thing I want to start off with is talking about our customers. So what do we know about our customers? So what's important when we're looking at our customer base is that we focus on local, those regular guests that we see every day. So we're going to start local and then we're going to expand out. We're going to expand that reach out to find new customers. There's basically three kind of customer buckets, I'll call them. So we have regulars. These are people that we see often. They come in on a regular basis. And the question becomes, how do we get those customers to spend more money or spend more often, right? So that is either a ticket question or a transaction question. So we're going to explore that a little bit further. And then we have infrequent customers. So those might be a certain type of customer that come in. We don't see them on a regular basis, but they're customers nonetheless. So where did they come from and when did they come? And because that will help us, understanding that helps us to build a broader strategy to gain more of those types of customers and then hopefully transition them into being regulars. And then the last kind of bucket of customers are completely new customers, people that would have not visited our businesses before, and finding those new guests or those new customers and introducing our business to them. Okay, so Ace, next slide, please. Okay, so what I want to talk about is we're all in the same boat here. We've all been living through COVID, and there's a lot of things that changed when COVID hit. So it's something that we call the pivot. So a lot of things changed. I want to just acknowledge that. These are things that are very obvious to all of us that have lived through this, but we need to understand where that pivot was so that we know kind of what's coming next. So if we think about a lot of the major changes that have happened during this period of COVID, we know that things like at one point everybody was dining in, and now we know that takeout has basically taken root. Right? So everything has gone from in-store dining or in-store shopping to everything being delivered or pickup. Okay. Another change that's happened is a lot of people are obviously working from home now. So when we think about, business districts that once existed, now most of those people are working remotely. So we need to kind of figure out what that's going to look like in the future. Another major shift was children learning at home. Schools were closed, as we all know, and parents were working from home. So a lot of these parents that were working were having to teach students at home. So there's been a lot of changes. And we've all lived through it. But now what we have to figure out is sort of what comes next. Okay, Ace, if you don't mind jumping to the next slide for me. Okay. So when we think about creating more revenue streams, we really need to think about the residual effects of the pandemic. So what becomes the new reality? We obviously know a lot of things have changed, and as we open back up, some things will go back to kind of a semi-normal state. But there are going to be some things that are different, and probably different for a fairly lengthy amount of time. So I want to kind of talk through some of those, because understanding those and keeping those things top of mind becomes very important as we not only kind of shift kind of how we do business, but it really determines how we market to the next guest and how we remain relevant. So when we talk about what becomes the new reality, convenience, I believe, is going to be a big factor. So as we know, when the pandemic started, everything was about convenience. People were working from home. They were potentially homeschooling their children. In a lot of ways, it became a little bit more hectic for them. And so convenience became a big deal. So if you were a restaurant, delivery was part of that convenience factor. Those were things that you needed to transition or pivot to in order to remain relevant during COVID. I think those things are going to continue. So convenience continues to be a big deal in the future. We need to think about discretionary income. Do people have more income or less income? That becomes really important. We don't know exactly what the answer is. I mean, a lot of people have obviously been out of work, so we need to keep that in mind. Business districts, that we maybe once relied on to kind of fuel our business may or may not return, may not return kind of in the capacity they once did. A lot of people are going to be working from home. So how does that impact your business? What changes? I think of business districts. If you own a clothing shop, people and you used to sell suits, right? Or you used to sell maybe something that was more suitable for traditional office. Maybe those types of things, those products aren't going to be as desirable as they once were, and people maybe feeling like, maybe they're dressing a little more casually. So that's kind of a pivot and something that you need to be mindful of in the future. But either way, things are going to change in terms of sort of what a business district might look like. Okay. Let's see, and continued reliance on social media marketing. So during COVID, there was a heavy emphasis put on social media and marketing through social media and e-commerce and things of that nature. So it's important to be up and current on your social media marketing because it's going to continue. The consumers were drawn to that during COVID, and that's going to probably continue well into the future. Leveraging technology. Leveraging technology is hugely important for a number of reasons. Data collection, which we're going to talk about more later in the presentation, but leveraging technology is going to continue to be a big deal as we move forward and out of the pandemic. Okay. Ace, do we have any questions so far? Okay. If not, we'll continue. Okay, so when we talk about knowing your customers, there's a few different things that we need to think about. So demographics is the most basic of the three categories here. So that's things like age and race and ethnicity. We really want to know who our guests are, and this becomes more important as we discuss this a little further into the presentation. But demographics, this is sort of the most basic understanding of who these guests are. Psychographics, which is things like personality and hobbies and interests and lifestyle and values. These are things that data can, technology can help us get to the bottom of it, but just basic engagement can also get us this information. And geography, where are our customers coming from? What industries, what neighborhoods? This all becomes really, really important as we kind of build out a long-term marketing strategy to drive sales. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, knowing your customer. So as we said before, we really want to start from the very basics and start expanding out. So the most elementary type of, customer gathering comes from basic engagement. Now, if you have a retail operation, this might happen at your POS system. So this is about people that are just talking and engaging with your guests using something that we call conversational engagement, and engaging with your guests around the products, around their preferences, about who they are, how their day is going, what they're doing. These are all the kind of the basics of great customer service, but engagement is huge. Now, this engagement might happen over the phone if you're maybe in the construction business, if you're in the manufacturing business. Maybe this is something that happens over the phone and you engage with those guests, but engagement can happen in any type of business, but it is the most basic form of data collection on your customers, okay? And then the next bullet point is basic data collection. So everyone should have some sort of means to collect some basic data. And again, that's like basic demographics about your customer base. So how are you doing that? This could be something if you have like a mobile app. The mobile app may be helping you to collect some of this basic data. If you have e-commerce on your website, then maybe you're getting some of that data there. It could be something as simple as a fishbowl on the counter of your business and people are dropping their business cards inside. That's going to give you some of this basic data collection, but it is important that you have a system within your business to gather some of this data so that you can start to figure out who your top customers are and where they come from and why they're coming to you. So you need to have some sort of system in place for that. The other thing that becomes really important is to understand traffic patterns and flow. So when are your peaks? Are the peaks seasonal? What are the peaks during the day? Understanding all that helps you plan. It helps you plan, and that planning helps you on all kinds of fronts. So it will help you in terms of your marketing efforts. It helps you in terms of cost control. It really kind of stretches throughout your business. It has a really good impact or important impact. So traffic patterns and flow is really, really important, okay? Now that might be data you can pull from a POS system. It may just be things that you figure out in terms of just basic operations of your business, but either way, you wanna really understand what that looks like. Participation in community events, hugely important. People that live in a community tend to be very loyal to businesses that support, whether it's their children's school, one of their local organizations. So participating in community events is hugely important. It really helps you to connect one-on-one with your customers. So please, you should be doing that. Network with other businesses. So this is a great way to do it. The Orange County Chamber is one of those ways to do that. So networking is hugely important for you to understand who your customer base is. Ask for referrals. So referrals, of course, are always great. You can do that in a number of different ways. Improving your website, having a really strong website is very, very important. Okay, e-commerce is hopefully part of that in some fashion. And then you need to be thinking about working with search engine on traffic flow and exposure. Okay, so as I said earlier, social media and leveraging technology all becomes very important. Most companies, if they hadn't already, once COVID hit, had started to make the transition to really developing technology and leveraging social media to drive their business, because they no longer had customers coming to them in the same way. So they really put a lot of extra energy into bolstering those pieces of marketing to draw in business. But it's going to be, if you haven't done that already, this is your chance to kind of get caught up, because it will be hugely important in the future. Okay, so again, working with search engines on traffic flow and exposure. Okay, so leveraging technology for data gathering. So leveraging the technology for data gathering, we're going to talk more about that later, but hugely important. And then social media for marketing and sales. Okay, Ace, next slide. All right, so this is just really quick. So this is expanding your customer target. So if you look at a lot of these, Yelp and Google Business and Facebook, LinkedIn, these are all free to you. So if you don't have a presence on these sites, you should. So you can create a one-page web, one web page for your business on each of these sites. They're generally free, and ideally you want to be routing those to your own web page. Okay, but a lot of great platforms that are free to you. Okay, we can go to the next slide, Ace. All right, so this is a really simple, fun little slide that I like to kind of show everybody. And as we were talking about data collection and really understanding who your primary customers are, you should really be thinking of, say, the top 10% of your customers. Who are those people that spend the most money on a monthly basis or a yearly basis within your business? And then going after and targeting your marketing to people that are of like kind. Okay, so in order to leverage your presence on social media, you could be everywhere, but that seems very costly and time consuming. So ideally, you want to understand the demographics that are drawn to your business and then leverage that. So what this slide is showing you is that females and males tend to gravitate to different social media sites. So women are on things like Pinterest and Instagram and Facebook, where males tend to be on things like Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so the other thing we talked about in terms of demographics and data collection is the general age of your top customers, and looking for, again, more like customers. And so when we look here, we're looking at things like age, okay? So in terms of social media channels, things like Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram tend to be on the younger side from a demographic standpoint. And then older tend to be on things like Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, okay? It's not to say you can't be on all of these, but if you really want to be targeted and put your time and energy, you want to put it obviously in the most impactful places, okay? All right, next slide, please. Okay, so social media, continuity and frequency. So what's really important as you kind of venture and develop your social media presence is that you keep it relevant, that the content, that you're posting new content at least one time per week. And you need to keep the content interesting, right? So you need to know who that demographic is that you're going after, and making sure that the content that you're posting is fresh and interesting and is going to be of interest to that targeted market. You want to make sure that you're carrying your branding and theme throughout all sites, and making sure that you're customizing it with purpose. Okay, so you want to make sure that whether you're on Facebook and LinkedIn, that your brand identity is clear as it is carried through all platforms. Okay. Leveraging social media influencers. So it's great that you can maybe engage with somebody that has a lot of followers and see if they can make a recommendation about your brand. You want to maybe utilize talented staff to create their own content. Okay, I think that is a great way to get your teams engaged and have them create content. If you have a person that's working for you, maybe you own a clothing shop and you have a person that has great style and is very charismatic, allow them to help create content for you. I think it's a great way to keep things fresh and exciting, okay? And then most importantly, decide on a goal and a message. So you really want to make sure that you're, again, identifying who your target audience is and what you want to achieve by the postings, and make sure that that content then matches that goal, okay? All right, let's jump over to the next slide, Ace. Okay, so one of the things we talked about earlier is the convenience, things like ease of to-go, curbside, online ordering, all of that is going to stay. So it really became big during the pandemic, obviously, and as we sort of transition to an open, or to openings, it's still going to be really important. So if you don't have it already, it's hugely important that you get involved with the mobile ordering. You have e-commerce on your website. Or elsewhere, doesn't have to be on your website. And that things like third-party delivery service, in-house delivery, curbside, if it's relevant to your business, is integrated into your business. Okay, those are all going to be very important. Convenience matters going forward. Stay top of mind. I really want to talk about this because it's important that you're engaging with purpose. Right? You're engaging with purpose on different touch points. Okay. So if you are a retail operation, that would be at the POS. Maybe you need to have signage at the POS that's promoting whatever it is that you feel like you want to promote. I'm going to say this because it becomes really important though, and it's a little bit of a pet peeve for me, is that make sure that whether it's on your website or at the POS, whatever message it is that you really want to promote, whatever it is that you're trying to get a point or get across to your targeted audience, that it doesn't get lost in clutter. Okay, that it doesn't get lost in color. So if you're in a retail store, that you make sure that you're directing their focus purposefully, and that they're not losing that messaging because things look chaotic or there's too much around it. Okay, and that is true also for a website or social media. Okay, so you need to make sure, like when we're talking about social media. So again, you're going to get them at different touch points. So if you're promoting something, you want to promote it at the POS or at checkout. If you have, maybe it's a web page or e-commerce, so you want to promote it there. Social media, you want to make sure you're promoting it there. On delivery, if you have delivery for your type of business, how are you going to convey whatever promotion that you're focused on during delivery? Maybe it's a coupon inside of a bag, maybe it's inside of the delivery box, whatever it is, you want to reinforce it there. You want to reinforce it on your website, again, making sure it's front and center and it's not getting lost in noise. You want to promote it at the community at large, and then through business to business. Okay, all really important. So remember, you need to be first and you need to be frequent. Okay, next slide. Okay, so incentivizing spending. So let's talk about this really quickly. So leverage add-ons. So really make a point at these different touch points to leverage add-ons. Okay, so that's something that could be something like you buy something and you get something for free, or this could be kind of an add-on if you spend, you buy 2 entrees and you get a dessert for free, or you get a dessert for half off, right? So you're just going to leverage add-ons. Okay, so you can do this with any type of business. That becomes hugely important. Bounce back offers. So you can purchase maybe a $25 gift card, and you're going to give them a $5 gift card to come back and use in the month of March or the March of April, whatever it is, right? Gift with purchase. You buy something, you're gonna get a gift for purchase. All of these types of things can help incentivize spending. You want to leverage natural increased spending periods. That's generally holidays or seasonal. You want to maybe think about mobile ordering perks, right? Point cards, mobile ordering perks, things of that nature. You want to create exclusive VIP offerings, and free shipping is hugely important. Okay, free shipping, I know that you're probably in the same boat I am. There's times where you go and you fill up your cart and then you get to the end and you figure out shipping is more expensive than what you purchased, and at that point you leave everything in the cart and you sort of walk away because it's so ridiculous, the price. So free shipping is a huge way to incentivize spending, especially when you give them a dollar threshold to meet. Okay. And then of course, special offers for first-time customers. Okay. The best way to incentivize spending, of course, is always to make excellent service part of your business culture and ensure quality is never compromised. Okay. So people like to do business with people and businesses that they like. Okay. Next slide, Ace. Ace, I believe I turn this over to you.
Yeah. So thank you, Daniela. So I take over from here on. How's everybody feeling? You guys doing okay? You guys able to power through?
Everybody awake?
Yeah. All right. So I want to discuss a little bit about partnerships, contracting, and the business-to-business type of stuff. The goal of this presentation was to help you guys find new ways, the tactical approaches to make more sales and make more profit. So a lot of ways people have pivoted and made that jump is they go after the big fish, right? Meaning they go after the bigger and bigger contracts. That's a great source of revenue, and obviously we would all love to, but we just have to know how to do that. Typically, a good way to do things, depending on the type of service, is you go to the top of the chain, the food chain, and usually that person on the very top has all these customers underneath them, where they would be they service those customers and they could potentially be yours. So you do this partnership kind of thing where you cross promote perhaps. You could potentially offer your services to those individuals, to those businesses, where they have the customers that you target typically. The way to do that though is always you have to find a way to promote your expertise. You got to find how you fall in line and how you can be complementary for those types of vendors. And that's the challenge usually. If you have any issues with that, please feel free to come to us. We'll be happy to go over some sort of brainstorming sessions and figure out how to tactically approach those types of things. A good other option is to provide what's called private labeling type of opportunities, where you could kind of white label almost your own product and service to those vendors, and then they could then sell it off to them, to their customers. You could do wholesaling, which basically, if you're like in the food industry, you can provide in bulk and sell things in bulk. It doesn't have to be food per se. It could be any type of tangible product, or even if it's a service-based type of business, you offer at a huge discount to the masses, to their bulk of their clientele, and therefore it gives some sort of incentive to obviously go with you. You could do government contracting. Those are harder. It's its own animal, it's its own game. But at that point, you got to have proposals, you're going to have a lot of traction, hopefully, and a lot of past experience or testimonials or something that shows you're capable of handling something of that size or scope of work, so that you can then go after these types of government contracts. But once you get one, then you can move on to the second and then to the third and so on and so forth. And hopefully that creates certain different types of revenue streams. And finally, I also put this here, you can potentially sublet your space if you have just tons of space and it's COVID, it's the pandemic, nobody's doing anything, nobody's using this giant facilities that you may or may not have. You could potentially sublet it. Some people sublet equipment, again, other sources of revenue, and partnering with other people. Just a thought. Okay, let's talk a little bit about productivity and labor management. This tends to be an issue, especially during the pandemic where things are slow. So you have less and less customers, which means the employees you carried, the people you had, the work you did is, people are just standing around now and just waiting for things to happen. So you want to make sure you increase that labor utilization and productivity. The way you do that is you check their processing time. The way I'm going to go about this is I'm going to pretend this is sort of a conveyor belt of things where you have different stations, and each station, each person has a different role and set of roles. Obviously, these are real life people and not everybody's, a robot, and you can't treat them as robots, but we're going to assume that that's the case for the sake of this presentation. So you have processing time. So you have the first station. Let's assume it's sort of like I'm going to use the subway model, where you have someone at the first station where they take in the order, someone at the second station where they prepare the food and make the food, and someone at the third station who pretty much preps everything and checks you out. That's considered the processing time, the time it takes from beginning to end when a customer walks into your service to say, I'm here, tell me what you're selling, and this is what I want, tell me what it costs and how to basically get me in and get me out. What is that time? You measure that time. And then you want to see how much of that time is being wasted by the other stations, by the other people who are in the station, and that's considered idle time. How much are your employees how long are your employees waiting around before that station is done and passes on to their station where they then service the client. Track that time and find a way to then reduce that. Typically, by doing this process, you find out that there's something called a bottleneck, and you figure that out. It could even be, you might be a one-person show and you might be your own bottleneck, which then that's good to identify, and then you realize maybe I need to delegate my work to someone else. But if in terms of employees, if there's employees that are just waiting around, perhaps you want to reschedule their time, you're wasting money, you want to find ways to save money, and then become a little bit more efficient, right? Another thing I wrote here is ordering ahead, which basically could mean like someone tells you when that order is coming in, and so you prepare the employees for that time. Otherwise, they're just waiting around doing nothing. So potentially have that type of service where you know the service that's going to be coming in, you know the customer that's coming in ahead of time, and then that way you can sort of address it. Have sort of task sheets if you need to, where, I mean, everybody wears multiple hats nowadays. If you're a single business owner, sole proprietor, you wear all the hats, but itemize or list the tasks that you have to do, that you carry on. Which one of those takes too much time? Which one of those can you delegate to someone else? It doesn't have to be another employee. It could be an independent contractor. It could be another agency or company that does the service for you. So hypothetically, if you're not good with numbers, you want to give it over to an accountant, right, who does the numbers, and that way you're not busy dealing with it. You can focus on sales, you can focus on marketing, the thing you're really good at doing, and perhaps hand this off to someone else who can do this for you to save up your time. That was the whole point of a task sheet. You can do this with employees as well. Give your employees, now that people are crossing over and trying to do everyone's work because you don't have enough customers to justify all those employees, you may want to find a way to do that. And obviously then manage the scheduling comes in. So train to multitask, either yourself or to your other employees. And a good incentive to do that, because now that they have to carry on more workload, is probably changing the employee compensation plan. If you have employees, find a way to increase employee retention that way, or have some sort of rewards or recognition to help justify the extra workload. A way to change the employee compensation plan is either increasing the rate a little bit, or giving them some sort of equity in the company, perhaps even future equity into the business, if that's possible for your business. All right, so simple organizational chart. Again, having something like this is pretty useful if you have something of this size. If you don't worry about it. But basically, you want to figure out how to reorganize this to make sure the roles and responsibilities are clearly outlined. And if you happen to be a one-person show, I say figure out what it entails in terms of the workload. So you have a marketing section. It could be you. What does that entail? What are the roles, responsibilities you have to do? See if you even have the time to do all that, and try to put in numbers for that. You can do productions, you can do sales, you can do the admin section of your business. Same thing, just itemize it, figure out what it entails, what needs to be done, spend a few minutes on this thing, and then see if you have, and allocate time typically on what it takes to complete this type of work. See if it makes sense for you to do it. If you have employees, same thing, you itemize it, see how much time it takes them to do it, and see if it makes sense to give them all that workload or the compensation that you're giving them, and see if that justifies it. Does that make sense? And this way you could potentially fill in that idle time that I mentioned, and figure out what this looks like pre-COVID, what it used to look like, and do a post-COVID analysis and figure out what that would look like. COVID times are, everything's out of whack. Everybody's, everything's hectic. So you want to change this up as you go through these steps before things open up, and hopefully things go back to normal. So moving on to leveraging technology and media. I know Daniel talked about this quite a bit. So, obviously when it comes to being efficient and optimizing, technology is very, very prominent. In fact, it's become even more prominent nowadays because now everybody's thinking about convenience, like Danielle mentioned. Everybody's thinking about ease and simplicity. So you want to find ways to streamline your business as well, not just for the consumer, but for you as well. Now that things are now that you have to wear multiple hats, you want to find things to make it as simple as possible. I know people till this day write everything on piece of paper in terms of accounting. I beg you not to, and find some sort of platform or financial platform that helps you do the accounting work and the financial projections and things like that. You can use Excel spreadsheet, that's fine. It doesn't have to be a fancy, expensive subscription. You can look into that, but please find a way to optimize your time. So streamlining businesses with the cloud, that's something. I've seen people upload things in the cloud where they can then access on their phones quickly. So when you're out and about and you're moving and you're not in front of a computer to access your info, your price sheets, your data, your marketing, at least you have it somewhere in the cloud where you can quickly get to it. So I implore you to look into that. Training and minimizing risks in terms of employee error. So, we talked about accounting. If you do this yourself, that's great. You don't have to pay someone, but try to optimize it and having some sort of program that calculates the math for you. That way it's less prone to error. And, if you have errors on your tax returns, that's going to be a huge no-no, obviously. So find ways to optimize things and make things faster. You could do the same with employee management and inventory software. If you have employees or inventory, that can optimize it for you. That way you're not by hand on paper going to each and every item in your inventory and checking it off. You can then have a software that does it for you. As Danielle mentioned, maybe like a POS system where it just checks things out. As things are being checked out, it just automatically subtracts it from your inventory list. Done. No need to worry, no need to go back to it, no need to number it yourself. Tracking orders might be a good thing too. You might be able to automate that as well. Figuring out data and demographics. The reason we say that is, and you'll probably hear me say this a lot, if you worked with us, you'll hear me say this ad nauseum, data helps you make better decisions. And that's pretty much the point of all of this. Increasing your sales, increasing profit, and doing all of this, you're not just doing it for the sake of doing it, you're doing it to collect data, and then data will help you make that better decision so that it helps you push to drive better sales. And I think Danielle touched upon this, doing this thing called customer centricity, where you're able to figure out specifically how to advertise and market to your target customer instead of just sending them random coupons of things that they never purchase, or telling them you have an offer, you're offering a service that they don't care about. Having that data about your customers helps you make those better decisions in terms of how to market to them, right? And specifically personalize the marketing. So we touched about a little bit on POS systems. This, you may or may not have this, but I'm not going to go through everything on this bullet point, but basically it's everything I've repeated and I've said. It helps you make better decisions, right? It helps you track sales. It helps you figure out how much sales you've made. Again, things you don't have to do by hand. Helps you manage inventory, manage labor, figuring out reporting and data. And with this, you make better decisions. So if I had someone, a customer who keeps coming to me and they keep purchasing the same things, I want to track that. I probably will not remember the customer who keeps coming through the door. Maybe I'll remember their name. That's great, but I won't remember so much what they're purchasing. But the system could, and that's less for things for me to remember and think about and keep track of. So then I can then say, or send them an email or a coupon or saying, hey, I noticed you keep purchasing baked goods. Maybe I send them a coupon for baked goods, or here's a baked goods sale going on. That helps you increase that customer retention. I think Danielle touched upon this, and helping you keep that current customer satisfied to keep coming back. You know, during the pandemic, it's hard to get new customers. I've seen people keep going to their current customers and keeping that customer relationship so that they keep coming back, especially when things open up. So don't need to go into more POS systems, but you can have mobile POS systems potentially to make things a little bit faster. Again, convenience, it's faster to get things through. People do credit card processing faster this way. You don't have to have a whole different merchant system account. You can do it through the phone nowadays. And it could be just a tap away, right? You could probably send a coupon just through the phone nowadays. You don't have to send them an email because nobody opens emails. They get inundated with so many. Perhaps a text message and it can go through there. And there's a lot of more real-time type of services. Okay, any questions, by the way, so far? How am I doing on time?
You're good on time. I think we have about 10
Okay.
minutes.
All right, perfect. I'll finish in time. Websites, I know Daniel touched upon this too, but what you want your website to do is, the goal is it's the face of your company before they buy from you, right? Especially for those customers you can't reach in person. And nowadays, and especially with the pandemic, it was really hard to reach your customers. So this is where everyone flocked to, right? So you want to make sure that your website is very convenient and has a good user experience or user interface experience, where when they go in, they're able to navigate through it to get to the product or the service that you're selling. Some people have just a lot of content on their sites. That's a no-no. It increases what's called a bounce rate, where you may have spent all this money on marketing and everybody comes to the site, but because it's so difficult to kind of go and sift through everything and figuring out what you're selling and trying to read through just bunch of text, they leave, and that's considered the bounce rate, the rate at which they leave when they come to your site. You don't want that, right? You want to increase the conversion rate. So focusing a little bit on your website, there's this thing, it's called A/B testing, where you test the different buttons on your sites. What I've seen is, for example, when you have a buy now button or purchase now button or learn more button, when that button is changed in color in terms of like black to like bright orange, it increases the conversion rate because it's easy to see and it's easy to click on, right? So just that thing could increase your conversion rate by a small margin. It could be like 10%, it could be 6%, it doesn't matter. But what is 10%, 6% of that conversion of those people you spent those dollars on, right, for marketing? It increases the value of your cost of your marketing, right? Your return on your investment, and it increases the sales you've just made. And hence the case in point of this presentation is to increase your sales. So, you know, you want to increase your expertise, you want to show them what you're capable of, but you want to make sure that your website is optimal to be able to have that conversion and that proper sales funnel. The other thing you want to make sure your website does is increases the search engine optimization, so that when people Google you, the website is relevant. And Google has these analytics and logarithms where basically, if it's relevant, it has good content, it increases on the search category. So Danielle mentioned this, but she showed you this page where all these sites exist, right? Where you can put your website on. The reason you're doing that isn't just to do that to be out there, it's to create more in links, so that when you're, and Google's algorithms say, if there's a lot of websites that have your website on them, it increases the search engine optimization. So when people Google your services, whatever services they may be, Google thinks, oh, you're relevant. A lot of websites are pointing back at your website. It pushes you up a little bit on that search engine. Does that kind of make sense? And that way you increase your sales, and the money you spent on marketing didn't go to waste, and it increases the chances of people coming in. Any questions about any of these? Probably not. Okay, I must be doing a great job then. So the other thing you could look into are QR codes. People will use these nowadays every time, everywhere you go. Maybe it's just a little click away. So instead of explaining everything that you do and just vomiting all of this on a website, on a newsletter, on a landing page, you know, on your email, you can probably put a QR code. It might be simple enough, and it might get people's attention, and they may want to just pull out their phones and just do a quick QR code scan. You can have this on magazines, billboards, whatever media you decide to use, social media. It might be a quicker way to get people to come to your site. Let's talk a little bit about reducing expenses. So we talked about on the other end where you do these sales, you do all these tactics to increase sales and bring customers in. Let's look at the other direction where you can, you know, go a little bit leaner. One way to do that is, I've noticed, especially during the pandemic, people reduce the items in terms of the product or services that they offer. This reduces the inventory, this reduces the cost of goods sold. So you're not buying more stuff, you're just reducing them, and you're trying to keep the more profitable ones. So people look back on their profit and loss sheet, they see the top 20, top 10 best-selling items or products or services, and then they reduce it to just those things. That way they don't have a bunch of inventory that they're stacking, and they're not just focusing too much on that stuff. They're also cross-utilizing. So the 10 or so items that they have, they make the most out of it, instead of just buying separate unique items that they sell off. I've seen like a massage parlor, they used to offer 10 different types of services. They found out there's only 4 of them that are making the most in sales, especially during the pandemic. And they said, let's just cancel out and take off all these other 6 items. We're spending labor on them. We're spending resources on them. No one's buying them. Why am I still offering these services? Just cross them out, use what you have with the top 10, top 4 items, and then use them effectively. And then some people ended up changing their hours, the peak time. They look into them. Again, data helps you make better decisions. They've seen there's a lot of traffic during very specific times of the day, and they said, let's just keep things open during those times. No sense in leaving the light on. No sense in spending on electricity, utilities, labor when no one's coming in. So they reduced those, and in fact, they turned to be slightly more profitable than they were before. Again, until things open up, this is ideally what you want to do. So other ways to reduce expenses, perhaps audit your merchant accounts, see if there's any way to do things cheaper. And maybe there's a cheaper service out there. I hear like instead of having a fancy POS system, people can have like Square, and Square is a very simple tool they just have, and you purchase and you just slide a card. It could be mobile, you could do it in person, you can go anywhere you want to go, and it's a quick way to do that. Marketing channels, same thing. Don't spend too much time on advertising on television if it's not bringing anything in, or billboards if no one's driving out on the streets. Perhaps focus on social media, which potentially is free, and you can probably use those channels instead. Consolidate your suppliers. You may want to look into a vendor who supplies your services or products. Maybe they can provide the same type of product or service the other person does that you're spending on. So that's less shipping, right? And that way it's more, it makes more sense for the vendor, the supplier, to ship you more items than it is to ship you little items with multiple different vendors. In fact, that's cheaper on you as well. And then consider cutting down on unnecessary services or supplies or things like that. If there's something you don't need, get rid of it. Okay. What's next? So this is where, again, I like to go in, I put on my nerd hat and I go into more about details and numbers. This is a simple sample profit and loss statement. It's a made up company. We don't share any, at the SBDC, we don't share anybody's information. Everything's confidential. So this is a made up company. I'm just going to go over this with you briefly, just to help you see what information is indicative of what types of decision that we typically make when we look at this type of stuff. So don't be alarmed. This is, again, the profit and loss statement. So we have your income, then you have your cost of goods sold, and then you have your expenses, which gives you then your net income or your net profit. We're going to look at the top half of that report. So in the top half, you could see that there is income. You could see the different sources of income. And this is, again, where I mentioned where you want to itemize it. And if you're good at doing numbers, great. If not, give this to an accountant. The accountant will do this for you and help you divulge this information and tell you what type of information that they see. Typically, you want to get an accountant who knows your industry or is in the same line of industry so that they can itemize it the way they've itemized here. This is a made-up construction company. So they said that they have income of $193,000 throughout the year. Great, but what's generating that money? As you can see, they've itemized and they said they have subcontracted income, they have materials income, labor income, and design income. The design income doesn't make much money. Is it worth spending all the supplies and resources and the marketing dollars to say, hey, we do designing work too? They're only making $3,000 out of the $193,000. Maybe I may want to consider getting rid of that and no longer offering that service until the demand comes in. Does that make sense? And so you focus maybe more on subcontracted labor because it makes 115 or 114 of the 193. That's a significant 80-something% of your income. The other thing I like to do is typically have percentages here with respect to the total revenue or the income itself. That way you can kind of benchmark things and see what other people in the same industry do. but that's just another preference. And then you look at cost of goods sold again. You spent quite a lot on subcontractors, which makes sense. It creates a lot of subcontracted labor income. I won't go into too much of this again, but these are sort of the information that's indicative of this company is spending a lot on design income. It's probably not worthwhile to offer it. They're not making much income. They may want to reduce that type of service. And then we look at the expenses, and this is where we audit things. And we say, we might look at insurance. Can we reduce the liability insurance? I may want to audit this and speak to my, the vendor. I look at automobile insurance. Maybe my automobile insurance is too much. Maybe I can audit that. And maybe I get to vet things and make better decisions where I look at the expenses and itemize my utilities. So on my utility section, it says I spent, this person spent $4,000. Maybe, I want to see what's costing most of that money. It looks like more than half is in gas and electric. Do I need that much gas and electric? Am I overspending it? Maybe I reduce my hours. Maybe I call them up and say, hey, is there anything you can do for me? Is there any programs? Is there any subsidiary programs I can use so that I can reduce that cost, because you're not really getting traffic. You're not getting people to come in. Maybe you're just spending too much dollars there. Okay, that was a super simplified, and I rushed through all of that. But again, if you have any questions, we're here to help at the SBDC. Thank you for the Orange Chamber of Commerce for having us here and doing this lunch and learn. Reach us anytime. We're here to do a quick, easy consultation. And then again, like I mentioned earlier, everything is free. Everything's paid through tax dollars. You might as well, if you're paying all these tax dollars and not making enough revenue, you might as well get your money's return and have us help you generate that revenue. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Alyssa and Connie. Thank you guys. Go ahead if you guys have any last thoughts.
Well, we just wanted to thank you so much, Ace and Danielle, for giving us your wealth of knowledge today. You clearly are experts in your field, and we really appreciate you being here. I loved hearing about, I took some notes about customer centricity, which I loved hearing about, and then also how you covered, not just how you're going to amplify your own profits, but looking at reducing those expenditures as well. So thank you so much for being here. Again, I believe Jenny was so kind to put in the chat information on how to track down both Ace and Danielle if you'd like to reach out. And then in the meantime, let me share my screen real quick to show you a couple of events that the Chamber has coming up that might be of interest to you really quickly. So on April 21st at noon, we have our signature business networking group. This is our group that gets together every 2 weeks over lunch. And these are both actually over Zoom right now until we can meet back up in person. But on April 27th at 9 a.m., we actually have our Exit Issues event with Congressman Lou Correa, who will be joining us. So please feel free to join us at both of these events. They're completely free, and you can register for them on the orangechamber.com website. Finally, the Chamber is celebrating 100 years this year, so we're really excited about that. I have a lot of exciting events coming up. We're talking about a birthday party, maybe a beer tasting with a lot of the local breweries, so it should be a lot of fun. Hope you can join us for that. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for being here. I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.